Chapter 97, The Wardrobe, Hanyu's POV. Hanyu woke to the sound of arguing, or at least as close to arguing as he figured Asao would ever come with their master. Oh no, he did pick a fight with Antony. My lord, please, this isn't necessary, his friend was saying in tones of entreaty. Your servants are already taking up far too much of our lord's rooms. There are rooms now, Antony grumbled. Time to treat them that way. Anyhow, you won't be taking up any more space than you already are. We're just rearranging. Unable to restrain his curiosity, Hanyu slipped from the sheets and padded out to the sitting room. Antony and Asao were standing on opposite sides of the chest the temple had sent, and they both looked up as Hanyu entered. Both were dressed for the day, but Antony's hair was unbraided and Asao clearly hadn't slept very much, his eyes shadowed as he sent Hanyu a look of appeal. For his part, Antony flinched and stared down at the floor as though looking at Hanyu hurt his eyes. Hanyu! The god's voice was oddly strained. Good. Pull a few of your favorite clothes out of your trunk, will you? Things you wear a lot. You too, Asao. That's an order. Asao bowed, looking wretched, and Antony spun away from the trunks and stalked into the bedroom, still not raising his eyes to Hanyu's as he brushed past him. Hanyu stared after him, bewildered, as he marched over to the wardrobe and started pulling his clothes off their hangers. He would have stayed there, staring, confused, and not quite awake, if Asao hadn't tugged desperately on his arm, dragging his attention away. Come on, Hanyu! His friend whispered, his voice as miserable as his expression. We have orders! Well, the morning was going to continue happening whether Hanyu understood it or not. He followed obediently as Asao drew him over to the chests and started pulling out his favorite clothes, as commanded. We'll each have 8 hangers for now, Antony called from the bedroom. If we have room for more, I'll get more, but this is where we're starting. Ah. Now Hanyu understood both the bustle and Asao's distress. Antony was ceding them some wardrobe space. If Asao hadn't been present, Hanyu might have been the one to protest and worry about the god putting himself out on their behalf. Even as it was, his stomach squirmed unhappily at the idea. But Asao looked awful. His discomfort with the situation seemed disproportionate, even if Hanyu granted that this wasn't something either of them had expected. Surely he realized that Antony wasn't going to punish them for going along with his own wishes. Hanyu thrust down his own unease and resolved to help Asao adjust to the idea. I need your help, my lord, he called, ignoring his friend's wide eyes. Antony appeared at the doorway, folding a pair of trousers in neat, practiced movements. Yes? I can't pick if I don't know what you like to see me in, said Hanyu. What do you like me to wear? Nothing. Anything! His master's voice hiked up a few octaves, suddenly panicked. Anything you want, I mean. They're your damn clothes. But I want to know what you like, Hanyu wheedled. The god huffed, shaking out the trousers and beginning to fold them again, eyes fixed on his task. It doesn't matter. It's not like we're pitching the rest of your things off the side of the ship. They'll still be in the chest. It's just a matter of what you want closest to hand. He was impossible. It was part of an attendant's duty to be visually pleasing for his god. Just because he wasn't of any sexual interest to Antony, that didn't mean Hanyu couldn't do his best to look nice for him. But I want to know, he repeated, this time with a little more whine in his voice than he'd planned. Please, Antony. Antony scowled down at the trousers in his hands as though they were the cause of every problem in his life. For a moment, Hanyu half expected him to tear the offending fabric to ribbons and stalk away, leaving his question unanswered, but he finally spoke. I like it when you wear the bright things, Antony almost snarled, still glowering down at the trousers. They make you happy. Asao! Out of the corner of his eye, Hanyu saw his friend drop the neatly folded pile of robes he'd been holding as though he'd been caught stealing them. He followed them down to the floor, bowing over them with a speed that could only come from panic. My lord, he quavered. Antony winced and softened his voice. Sorry, didn't mean to snap. It just looked like you were done. Ready to come hang your things up? Once all three of them had placed their clothes, Hanyu couldn't help noticing the contrast between his portion of the wardrobes and the others. Antony favored sober blues, blacks, and browns, and Asao's clothes were uniformly muted pastels. Hanyu's bright, colorful robes rioted through the middle portion of the closet like a festival. "We can definitely fit more in there," Antony mused as he looked over the rows of fabrics. "I'll get us some more hangers." Hanyu pointed to the 2 piles of shirts, vests, and trousers, all folded with an almost irritating neatness, that now sat next to the wardrobe. "What about your other clothes, my lord?" "I'll get myself a little trunk when I get the hangers," Antony said with a dismissive wave. He still wasn't meeting Hanyu's eyes, and he was acting a little jumpy. It was different from the nerves he'd shown the last few days when he thought Hanyu was angry with him. Instead of attempting to integrate himself, Antony now seemed to be treating Hanyu like the sun, as if looking at him or standing too close would make the god burst into flames. But he certainly hadn't complained about their proximity last night, as they'd slept in each other's arms. "Honestly, this mercurial little man is going to be the death of me." Hanyu was still smiling fondly at the thought when a knock on the door signaled the arrival of breakfast. "It's Edgy's day!" Hanyu cried happily as he bounded towards the door. Asao stepped in his path. "You're still in your night clothes." Then, with a glance at Antony, he lowered his head. "Please, allow me." He was speaking in such a deferential tone that it took Hanyu a moment to realize that he was asking his permission. Right. In the bliss of his reconciliation with Antony, Hanyu had forgotten all about Asao's first slave nonsense. In his own defense, it wasn't as though Asao himself seemed to often remember that he had decided he was below Hanyu in the hierarchy of Antony's attendants. But apparently, with their master right there, he still felt the need to defer to Hanyu. "All right," Hanyu agreed, a little dizzied by the act of giving permission. Had he ever been asked to sanction another person's action before? He was always the subordinate, the one who had to ask permission to do things, though with Antony he'd largely given it up. Now that he thought about it, it was a little startling, all the things he simply did without asking these days. As long as his master wasn't complaining, though, he didn't see any reason to be bothered. But he needed to ask Antony about this first slave business and confirm that it was all in Asao's head. It didn't seem like the sort of thing that would even occur to Antony, and Hanyu was fairly sure that even if it had, he could get the god to change his mind. Now that he knew how it felt to have someone act as his subordinate, however sporadically, he could say with certainty that he didn't enjoy it at all. He plucked a bright green robe from his temple chest, unwilling to disturb any of the ones he'd just hung up, and padded into the bedroom to pull it on. As soon as he wriggled out of his sleeping clothes, however, he heard a stricken little whimper and whirled to see Antony standing at the door of the washroom, tying a plain leather strap at the end of his freshly woven braid. The god's hands had gone still, and he was staring at Hanyu like he'd never seen anything more frightening. Hanyu glanced down, but there was nothing unusual about his body. Something else must have upset Antony. "Are you all right?" Hanyu rushed forward, the robe he'd been about to put on falling forgotten to the floor. "What's wrong?" Antony flinched back from his reaching hand. Nothing! I, tripped and bit my tongue." "Oh, no!" With his sharp teeth, that had to hurt. "Let me see." The god hesitated, worked his jaw a little, flinched, then opened his mouth and extended his tongue. Sure enough, a small puncture near one side was welling up a dark bead of blood. "Thee?" Antony lisped, and Hanyu realized he meant see. He retracted his tongue and continued speaking normally. "Just my own clumsiness, nothing to fuss about." But Hanyu couldn't resist fussing just the same. The sight of Antony's blood reminded him that the god hadn't fed yesterday, and surely he would need his strength for their upcoming island adventure. Anyhow, Hanyu had sworn that Antony would never again be hungry on his watch. "You ought to eat something," he fretted. "You wouldn't be clumsy if you'd had a proper meal." Antony's eyes flickered up to his for just a moment, amusement battling some strange new panic in his expression. "I'm not sure Julia would find your logic terribly sound." Hanyu was not in the mood to stop scolding. Either way, you didn't have so much as a drop yesterday. You said yourself we're going to be busy for the next few days. You'll need energy.
I'm fine, Antony growled. I'm older than your whole city. I don't need to be mothered by some bossy, naked man.
Hanyu wasn't sure what his nudity had to do with anything, but he did have to admit that he was being rather bossy. I know it's not my place to tell you what to do, my lord, he spilled out in a rush, and I'm being presumptuous, and you really should punish me for it. Which reminds me, you still owe me a punishment from when I ran off without you. Anyhow, not the point. The point is that I'm being insolent, but I'm also right, and I'll worry if you don't eat. So please let's find Lord Theo after breakfast and...
I already asked Thad to take you and a sow for the day, Antony interrupted. I need to meet with Theo and some of the others, yes, but Marcus will be there too, and I doubt you want to see him.
Ugh. Hanyu most definitely did not. Still... What if we went early so you could eat, he suggested. Then I could come back before the meeting started and be here, or go join Asao and Thad. Otherwise, I'll be out of my mind with worry the whole time, and they'll be sick of me.
Antony groaned. Just eat your breakfast, will you? I'll think about it.
Hanyu practically skipped back to his fallen robe, not bothering to contain his exuberance. He knew he'd won.